Hello everyone. Here I am going to start with environment and ecology. Now if you look at environment and ecology, it has become a very important area over the last few years. It was not a very important area, especially considering the mains examination if you go back 10 years or 15 years of time. But if you look at the last few years of question papers, both in your prelims paper and your mains paper, in both the areas we have seen that increasingly good number of questions are being asked from this particular subject. So that's why it becomes very important for you to understand what kind of subject this is, what to read from this subject, what needs to be understood, and what kind of questions should be expected from this subject. So all these are the things that we'll discuss in the first part of your discussion. So here I'm just going to introduce you to the subject and we'll look into each and every area of this subject, what kind of questions can be asked. We'll take some examples of the past few years of question papers and we'll try to analyze them to understand what should be read for the future question papers. So let us begin with the session. And the very first thing when you start with any subject for that matter is to understand the syllabus. Now, if you consider the syllabus of environment and ecology, both at the level of your prelims examination and at the level of your mains examination, what you will find is that in both prelims and mains, the syllabus has just been written in one sentence. Unlike other subjects that you have, for example, if you consider history or polity or economy for that matter, you'll see that the subject has been defined in a very particular manner and it has been elaborated a lot, especially when you look at the mains syllabus. But when you look at the syllabus of prelims and mains for environment, you'll see that only one line has been written in both the cases. But to understand this one line is very important for us, because this is not a subject which is similar to your other areas. You cannot just rely on one piece of information or just one set of books and one set of lecture to be able to answer all the questions that are being asked in your prelims and mains paper. So here the subject, that's why the approach to the subject will be very different. So let's start. So the first thing with what we see in your prelims paper is general issues on environmental ecology, biodiversity and climate change. Now what they have written is that do not require subject specialization. So what they mean here is that we have to look at all these concepts, all these areas from the point of view of its basics, from the point of view of something that a layman should be able to understand. So you need not go into the technical details of the subject. What you just need to understand are the basics of all these areas. And when we look at the breakup of the syllabus that has been prescribed here, we'll go into the detail and we will try to understand that what kind of areas do we expect to be asked in each of these areas that have been mentioned. Now let's move on and look at the syllabus that has been given for your mains examination. So here it says conservation, environmental pollution and degradation, environmental impact assessment. So these are the keywords that have been mentioned for your mains examination. So you have to understand each and every part of it. So what you see is, if you try to analyze the paper, so here first of all, issues is a keyword. So whatever we are looking at is basically with respect to the issues that we see in each and every part related to the different areas of environment. So whether it's related to environmental ecology, whether it's related to biodiversity, or whether it is related to climate change. In a similar manner, where if you look at the mains syllabus, what we see is conservation is one word mentioned here, environmental pollution and degradation is the second phrase that you have, and the third phrase is environmental impact assessment. Here we'll have a look at each and every part. We'll break down the entire syllabus that has been given here and we will try to understand what exactly do these kind of things mean and how are they asking questions from each and every part of this particular syllabus. So if you look at this is the basically breakdown of everything that you have to learn in this subject. So first of all, what we'll start with are the basics of ecology. We'll try to understand how exactly the environment functions, how exactly the interactions between different organisms function, and how exactly do we define each and every part of the ecosystem. So here very important word will be ecosystem. And once we dive into the subject, we will try to understand what is the meaning of ecosystem, what is the meaning of environment, how do each and every organism survive, how are they dependent on each other. All these kind of things we will have a look at when we look into the basics of ecology. Then biodiversity. So biodiversity, as the word itself suggests, it is biological diversity. We are looking at biological diversity. So once we go into that particular chapter, we will try to understand what is the meaning. So in layman terms, right now what you would understand is that we are going to look at various species, whether plant species or animal species or microbial species, and their existence and how they are very important for the survival of the entire humanity, or rather the survival of the entire planet itself. Then there will be a special focus on Indian species, and this is what we have observed in the previous year question papers, that a lot of questions will be asked from the species that have been in news, whether it is a mammal, whether it is a reptile, whether it is a microbe, whatever kind of organism we have, all these species, especially the species which belong to India or which are found in India. Then after that, pollution, all the different kinds of pollution, air pollution, water pollution, land pollution, all that becomes a part of the syllabus. Then various environmental issues that we have, for example, why the rivers are drying up, why there is a scarcity of water in the world, all these kind of issues which are related to the environment, all these kind of things will also be seen in this subject. Then climate change, and this is a topic which is a burning topic. Every week at least one news column you will definitely see has been given to climate change, and all the newspapers, not only one particular newspaper or the other, you'll see that all the major newspapers will always have one or two articles in a week which are given with regards to climate change. Then after that, environmental organizations. Here we are talking about both national and international. Also the bodies, the environmental bodies that we have in India. For example, National Green Tribunal, then Central Pollution Control Board. So all these kind of bodies that we have in India, plus the environmental organizations that you have. For example, let's say RED or Red Plus or IUCN. All these kind of international bodies or international organizations will also be a part of your question paper most often. Then all the various summits and conferences that keep on happening. For example, if we take conference on biodiversity, so the conferences have been happening ever since the first conference happened in 1992, which was also called as Earth Summit. So after that, all these conferences, all these summits that have happened over a period of time, they all become a very important part of your preparation. Then after that, the schemes, initiatives and the laws related to the environment, especially that have been made by the government of India. After that, finally, the national parks, the wildlife sanctuaries and the biosphere reserves that have been in news in last 1.5 years. See, here it's not possible for you to be able to learn about each and every national park, each and every wildlife sanctuary, and of course all the biosphere reserves that we have in India. So that's not possible for you to learn about each and every one of them. So that's why the ones which have been in news for one reason or the other, especially during last, you can say 16 to 18 months, they would be the ones which will be the most important for your examination. So this is a brief breakup of what kind of things you have to expect in this particular area. Now, once we go into the topics, once we go into the subject, obviously there will break down each and every chapter, and each and every chapter will give you all the details that are required for this examination. But here I am just giving you a brief about what kind of paper are you looking into, what kind of topics will be taught in this paper, and how the questions or what kind of topics are being asked in the examination. So this is about the breakup of the subject. Now I will take some examples about each of these areas that have been given here, and I'll show you how the questions have been asked. See, here you need not know what is the answer of each and every of these questions. You just have to understand how the questions are being asked, what kind of questions are being asked. That's the foremost thing that you need to know once you dive into the subject. Because as I said, this is not a subject which is a normal subject like polity or economy or history. It is very different from each of those subjects which are purely static in nature. Here, a lot of current affairs are asked, a lot of issue based questions are asked. So, each and every of these questions that we have taken as an example here is basically about the breakdown that we just saw 2 minutes back. So, just look at the question. Which of the following is the best description of the term ecosystem? Now, ecosystem is a very basic term. This is a term that will be, you can say, the start of your preparation. And what I've seen, especially when I go into the classrooms, is that even after 6 months being into the preparation, students are not exactly aware of this term. They don't exactly know the meaning and don't understand the meaning of this particular term. So anyway, this is something that we will start our discussion with. We'll try to understand what is ecosystem, because unless you start ecosystem, you cannot understand what are the components of these ecosystems. And then you cannot understand what is happening and how the interactions happen, how each and every organism has been able to survive over such a long period of time. So to be able to understand each and every part of these information, we definitely need to understand what is the meaning of ecosystem. So this is something which is the basic of this particular subject. So that's why very easy question to solve once you have been able to get the concepts right. Then one question, example, biodiversity. Due to some reasons, there is a huge fall in the population of species of butterflies. What could be its likely consequence or consequences? See, let me go back to the prelims syllabus that has been given. General issues on environmental ecology, biodiversity, and climate change. So here we are looking at a problem related to biodiversity. So now when you look at this subject, and if you are looking at the question paper only, what can also happen is you might think that is it a subject where I need to understand the basics, or can I directly jump onto the topics that I am looking at in the newspaper? Can I directly go to a topic and try to understand what the issue is and just make notes on these issues, just try to understand these issues and keep on making notes based on current affairs only? Now here what happens is, unless you have understood the basics, unless you have understood the meaning of biodiversity, unless you have understood how biodiversity works, unless you have understood what are the various ways in which we define biodiversity, or what are the components of this definition of biodiversity, unless we do all this, it is not possible for us to be able to go into an issue related to biodiversity and understand the solution of that issue or understand the meaning of that issue. So that's why the basics will become very, very, very important for you to be able to understand all these topics. And if you have been able to understand the subject or the basics of the subject well, in that case, these kind of questions become very easy. Otherwise, these kind of questions will become guesswork for you. And guesswork is always dangerous. You cannot just try to guess why something is happening or what could happen if something like this happens. That will not always give you the correct answer. Because to be able to get to a final answer, it's very important for you to be able to understand everything around it. Okay, so this is a question which is a highly conceptual question, although taken from some areas of current affairs, but a highly conceptual question. And that's why once you have been able to complete the lectures based on biodiversity, you will be able to answer these questions as well.